The Bastard Generation. Hour 0. Richland. 7 minutes till. Stood looking at the apparatus which would take him, the final straggler, back to Earth. It was fitting that he should be the last. He had, all unwitting, been the first to make the voyage across the stars. Now he stepped forward and closed the loop. He closed his eyes on the alien atmosphere, knowing that when next his lids went up, he would see his family. Richland Offenbach cracked his knuckles and sat back. Grasping the arms of his office chair and locking his knees to keep it from swiveling, he pivoted his upper body first to the left, then to the right. He raked his fingers through his sandy, just-thinning hair. He picked up the old pack of Camels from the corner of his desk, tapped it thrice on each elbow, held it to his chin as he contemplated tearing the foil strip off, and set it down, still unopened. He watched his word processor program auto-save the file, his lips spread in a slow grin. Relaxing his knees, he spun around in the chair. On one side of his home office for writing, the wall was lined with bookshelves stuffed with reference books, dictionaries, thesauruses, encyclopedias, etc., in various languages, as well as a single shelf reserved to hold the works of whichever author for whom he was currently ghostwriting. On the other side of the room, there were just as many bookshelves, but these were barely half filled. That side of the room was reserved for books falling into one of 3 categories: books he had ghostwritten that were well received by critics and fans, ghostwritten books that were not well received, and books he had published under his own name. There were a few dozen each in the first 2 groupings, but he had only written 5 books using his own name. Richland leapt from his chair. In a fluid movement that made him feel more like a graceful dancer than he truly was, he knocked every volume off the rotating author shelf. He kicked these books he had studied and style-copied for months, scattering them over the carpeted floor. He giggled, coughed to clear his throat, cackled, and grimaced. "No, I am not just some fairy-tale witch," he proclaimed to the room as he disengaged the locks that held back the world whenever he needed to be left alone to write. Opening the door, he winced. He never failed to forget how bright Frida liked to keep the rest of the house. His offices were lit softly, dimly, but the hallway was nearly blinding with its multitude of old-fashioned fluorescent fixtures. Richland dashed back to his desk, yanked open each drawer in random succession, and pulled out an assortment of glasses cases, each in a different color. He let his fingertips play around the edges of the cases in shades of blue and red, but settled on a soft violet. The pair of sunglasses held within matched the case's color perfectly in frames and lenses. Setting them on his face, he replaced all the rest in their respective drawers and returned to the hallway. He did not lock his writing office door, or even close it. No one with access to his house would dare disturb that sacred space. Before he could get 12 steps down the hall, he giggled, coughed, cackled, and grimaced again. He stepped over to the small closet between his writing and bottleship offices. He stripped out of his clothes and placed them, neatly folded, on the bare shelves in the closet. Only one thing had been waiting on one of the shelves. Balling it in one hand, he shut the closet, kicked shut the door into his writing office, and skipped to the end of the hall. The 3rd-floor hallway terminated at this end into a wide spiral staircase with walls that followed the curve. Inset on both sides were small glass-covered alcoves. Those on the interior wall showcased the artwork, poetry, and other trinkets of Richland's youth, while the exterior displayed the works of 6-year-old Ramona Offenbach, already more gifted in all respects than her father had been by twice her age. When he passed anything that contained the slightest trace of violet, he would stop, touch the balled-up rainbow-colored cloth to his sunglasses, touch it to the case before him, and then resume his descent. When he reached the place where there should have been, but was not, a doorway onto the 2nd floor, Richland knocked. "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little sloth, too." He went on down, repeating the ritual wherever he found Violet, until he reached the very bottom of the steps. He pounded thrice on each of the double doors, opened them just long enough to toss the balled-up blindfold out, and sat back on the steps to wait. "Safely under the rainbow we are," a playful voice called through the crack between the doors before Richland noticed they'd been opened just that much. The The ghostwriter and his wife had been performing this particular piece in the post-final draft dance since their daughter had gotten old enough to toddle around and grab any old dangling thing in sight. Still, he peeked around the doors, glancing both ways. "Richland, Hoppelmeyer, Offenbach!" Frida shouted in a voice trying to be angry, but she couldn't wipe the grin off her face. "Do you think for one fleeting instant that I am going to allow my daughter to see that little thing between your legs? Why, if I did, it would ruin her expectations for any and all future lovers she might take." "To know why you insist on calling me that," he grumbled, then shouted, "It is done!" "Are you going to tell me what this one is called?" "Tell us, Daddy." "Yeah, tell us, won't you, Daddy?" "Frida!" He gawked at her in genuine shock. "Not in front of Ramona." "Oh, Daddy, it isn't like I can't hear you and Mommy roughhousing." Richland's face went several shades of red. Frida cackled. Richland grimaced, but soon broke out in giddy giggles when their blindfolded daughters started running in figure eights around them. Richland and Frida scooped the child up together and, all grins and giggles, rushed from the great hall into the private dancing studio they had built into the house. Their dream home was bought and built years before they ever got pregnant, but the Offenbachs had been confident that their child, boy or girl, would love to dance. Neither of them was much good at it, but Ramona was a natural, as swift as a cheetah and as graceful as a swan. They released the girl and watched her flip and spin, all unseen, from one corner of the studio floor to the other. Richland sighed, more content in this moment than at any point in his writing career before or after meeting, courting, and marrying Frida Offenbach, nee Marx. "I love you, woman," he whispered in Frida's ear. She turned her head, lips open to speak a reply, but he kissed her before she could make a sound. Smiling, he stepped away. Frida watched her husband run up behind twirling Ramona and scoop their child up into his arms, making them both laugh wildly. Frida traced a nail over her lips and sighed, more content in this moment than she had ever been before or would ever be again in her life. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. "Frida Maria, what do you think that you are doing?" Richland had set Ramona down beside him so he could plant his hands on his hips and enunciate each word carefully. Ramona knew her father well enough to copy his posture without seeing him, and together they repeated, "Frida Maria, what do you think that you are doing?" Holding her lips firmly shut, she unlocked her phone, opened her favorite video capture app, and pressed record. She cackled when Richland's arm shot down into an X over his crotch. Ramona took a few steps sideways, mimicked her father's ridiculous attempt at modesty, and as soon as her mother stopped cackling, she started up. "There is such a thing as a blur function?" "Yeah, Daddy, blur function." Richland leapt over and scooped his child up again, tickling her as he spun her in the air. Frida captured it all, grinning and laughing and, strangely, crying. She looked down at her feet, holding the phone by her side as she dabbed at her eyes with her sleeve. "Daddy?" Frida's eyes shot up. She brought the camera lens up, too. "Richie?" She hadn't called him that pet name since their third date. "Is anything all right? Is everything the matter?" Ramona was backing away from her father, wrinkling her little nose. "What's that smell? Why'd you drop me like that?" "Ramona, don't take that blindfold off," Frida commanded breathlessly. "Don't, child." As the blindfold fell to the studio floor, Richland Offenbach spontaneously burst into flames. Shocked by the sudden heat, child and mother fell together on their asses. Ramona looked away, but Frida kept her eyes and her phone camera trained on her husband. The man was engulfed in an impossible inferno, but it was completely contained inside his skin. In a flash, the Ghost Rider was reduced to ashes inside the deflating organ of his skin. As it crumpled to the floor, Frida noted little tendrils of smoke rising from his emptied eye sockets, anus, ears, and the tip of his now hollow penis. There was a clock on the strip of plankboard over the mirrored wall. It struck midnight just as Frida tossed aside her phone, still recording, and crawled to her sobbing daughter's side.